little eggy is live. It will be helpful to have regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, I know. Set up a schedule. All right, welcome to episode 3 of We'll Do It Live. This is a rare in-person episode, or maybe hopefully not too rare.
In the future, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. So Jerry is in Canada. He's in Toronto. He just spent the past week up in Waterloo at an amazing conference and had a great experience. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And a couple other things, because I know just talking before the show, you indicated that you kind of want to, and I have some thoughts too about, expanding the reach of what we're trying to do here. But say hi to the audience.
Hey everyone, it's been a while. Let's get something going so that we can have people respond and we can see live reactions and comments and things like that. But no, it's good. I'm very happy to be back. Honestly, got welcomed to some snow and it felt kind of good. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, okay, it feels familiar. I came back for an event called the Socratica Symposium. It's a completely student-run, student-led event that University of Waterloo students put on what they call the world's greatest demo day. And what it is a bunch of people have been working on projects for the last 6 months, things that they've been pursuing on the side, independent of school. Specifically, Socratica is a place where people work on things outside of the school curriculum, and they just pursue whatever they want, and then get some progress, and they go on stage in front of an entire sold-out hockey arena, and share what they've been doing. And I must say, if you go online and you look at the discourse around where this country is headed, there's a lot of negative people out there. Mm-hmm. But when I go to events like this and I get to see what the kids are up to these days, I'm very confident. I feel very good. I think there's so much ambition and talent and creativity and respect and thoughtfulness that goes into each and one of these presentations, but not just the demos themselves, but also the actual organizing and the hosting of the event. I've met people who've flown in from places like San Francisco, from Vancouver, from Halifax, from basically all over North America. Somebody flew in from Singapore, which is nuts. Yeah, they came in just for the symposium.
Wow.
And so there were a bunch of different projects. I think it's probably more well known for the tech aspect, but also there were art, there's poetry, there's paintings, there's all sorts of things that people were just inherently interested in and wanted to research deeper and present kind of the summary of what they've been up to. Yeah. Wow. So that was something that I think this was by far the largest they've done. They rented out the entire hockey stadium, and I don't know what they'll rent out next, but I have no doubt that they'll find a way. Yeah. And the energy was incredible, and just the people, it was definitely a highlight of the year so far.
Okay, that's awesome. And I attended an interesting event too last week. I know TikTok has a lot of censorship, so I'm not going to swear, but it's called F Up Nights.
Oh, okay.
And actually a really interesting event where entrepreneurs, this event, it was their 8th anniversary. And so we had 3 entrepreneurs that went up and talked about things that they effed up. And so you had one was, I forget the name of the company, it was Canada's first cold brew coffee brand. And he explained, they were in Whole Foods, explained some of the challenges. Because WeWork and I think their last year before acquisition, WeWork was going to be a third of their business.
Oh dear.
Right before the implosion. And then you had another lady who actually, I need to get back to her because I have her card. It's from, the company is Maeve and something, and they do slippers. Okay. Female founded brand. They were on Dragon's Den, and she told this amazing story about getting the call to be a replacement on Dragon's Den and rushing from Oakville down to Toronto. They had 30 minutes to be there. She's stuck in rush hour traffic on the Gardiner. And then the last company was, it was the founder or one of the co-founders and CEO of this company called Othership. And
I've heard of them.
Yeah, Othership is super trendy right now. Hot right now. Basically, it's ice plunge and sauna with classes. And actually, it's one of those instances where actually Toronto is leading the way. We're going from Toronto down to New York, and they're opening a bunch of locations in New York. They have 2 there right now. And it's really cool, and his story is incredible because he was, and this will tie back, we're going to come full circle here back to venture capital. He was leading a tech company in his 20s, founded a company, raised 25 mil of VC capital. Company ends up going under. He ends up with a strong drug addiction.
Oh no.
And he talks about how he built his life back and ended up founding Othership just in his backyard, him and his wife's backyard with some neighbors, and it's 5 of them that started the company, and how basically that cold plunge in the sauna, how that was a key step for him in his recovery. And he talks about, like, I was getting PTSD flashbacks of just some of the stories from construction, because I've been there, where you're under the gun and you're trying to build and trades aren't doing X, Y, Z in the city. So it was very interesting. I'll put the link out there because this will go on Substack, and follow us across all our socials, LinkedIn and all that stuff as well. We're on YouTube now as well. So we'll get the links out there. But it was a really exciting example of a Canadian company, obviously in the wellness space, making an impact. And actually we're exporting our companies down to the States and our culture. And I thought that was amazing.
Yeah. I think, right now is a very interesting time, right? The tariffs are, who knows what's going to happen? There's lots of talk here and there, but I think it's really kind of lighted.
Is it happening in a Signal chat though?
Yeah, who knows?
Sorry, we're referencing the New York, the Atlantic story. Yeah, sorry.
No, but I think it's like a really interesting time, because we know that, I think if you're going to be honest and blunt about it, people are going to be hurt by this, right? Like, the entire point of free trade is to make it easier to buy and sell stuff. And the point of the tariffs is to make that more complicated. And all these supply chains or relationships that have been built out over the years are now getting, disrupted artificially by kind of one dude, going on and about it. But I think it was Churchill, or don't quote me on this. Someone once said,
some old dead
guy once said, never let a good crisis go to waste, right? Yeah. And I think in this crisis, the government has done as reasonable of a job as possible to mitigate some of the damages, and now it's also kind of lit a fire under a lot of people saying, hey, we want to do something for the country, we want to do something for our communities, we want to help each other who are getting affected. And I saw that the Canadian Armed Forces of Reserves are getting a huge amount of signups. People want to participate. People want to do something. And in the context of economic woes, I think one of the most important things that Canadians can do today, if you're in the position to do so, is to try to start a business, right? Like, it doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be, anything crazy. But right now, what people need are jobs, they need hope, they need opportunities. And if we can find ways to kind of create that for people, if you're capable of doing so, I think it's almost like your patriotic duty to start a business, right? And I think if you look at countries like Sweden or the Netherlands or Switzerland, which are small countries surrounded by much larger neighbors, they're still able to achieve a lot of economic progress and success, while also maintaining some of the qualities of life that we want for ourselves, that we have here in Canada, but that, in the US that you don't have. Mm-hmm. So I think there's almost this false discrepancy of people making you choose between having A or having B. Like, I don't think it's about one or the other. It's more about, okay, you can have both, but the question is how much? And then how do we expand not just the percentage of the pie that you get, but the pie overall? Because if you look at, I think, economic activity here, it's been a little bit slower than where it could have been, especially if you look at private sector versus public sector growth.
For sure. Well, I want to take it, we were having maybe I'll turn this into a mini production meeting, because we're having a bit of a production meeting before talking about, and you were saying that you made the point, I like the quote, you said, well, I have to succeed. Like, I'm doing this and I have to succeed. Yeah. And I kind of want you to explore what you meant when you said that.
Yeah. I would say that before I came to the podcast room with Will, I signed up to go to an event at what's called the Empire Club of Canada. It's a very old historic organization where people have talked about where the country will go for the next, where people are like planning for the country.
A lot of bigwigs speak there,
Yeah.
prime ministers, titans of industry.
Yeah, foreign leaders sometimes.
Leaders, right?
And so going into that room, just from attire, from personality, from age. But before coming to Canada, I'd also spent a couple of months down in San Francisco, where a lot of innovation has been created over the years. And I think it's kind of incredible to contrast the difference of attitudes. It was a lot harder to kind of start conversations from scratch, whereas...
But would you say Canadians always have this reputation as being very friendly?
I mean, I don't think they're not friendly. I think we had conversations and they're willing to talk, but it's more so you have to prod a lot more to get information. Whereas I think the environment in San Francisco, and I'm saying this is not necessarily true of all of the US, but especially down in the Bay Area, it doesn't matter if you're a really well-known CEO or if you're just someone starting out. It seems as if you know the fundamental basis, if you have fundamental knowledge, then people are willing to have conversation with you, right? Like as long as when you're kind of speaking from almost like an intellectual equal weight terms where someone's clearly done some research, you don't have to agree, you can have different perspectives and different ways of doing something, but you can engage people in conversations that you find interesting and they find interesting too. Like that exists.
You're saying it's not so much a status hierarchy, so much as what you're able to bring to the table in any given conversation.
Yeah, and they're also very happy to accept and welcome newcomers to participate in that group. It's like, oh great, somebody else who's interested in what I'm interested in. Maybe we can help each other in some sort of way and grow and build what we're doing. And
you'd say just hearing that sounds to me a lot like everyone's always looking for talent or the next opportunity, right?
Yes.
It's like, I was telling people this story the other day that I used to wear a suit and tie 6 days a week. I didn't wear a tie on the 7th day, on Sunday. And the reason I was always in suit and tie was because of my dad. My dad, I worked for my dad in land development, and my dad would say, William, it doesn't matter if it's 8 a.m. or 11 o'clock at night. Somebody could come up to you and say, hey, I have a piece of land, and I don't know what to do with it, right? And he said, the image that you're portraying at that given time, he said, if you're dressed super casual, obviously pre-COVID, my dad passed away before COVID. The standards of dressing are have changed, right? But, he said, the image that you portray at that time, that changes how people relate to you, right? And that's the way my dad thought about real estate, is that opportunity, deals aren't in the office. He always used to say that to me, right? They're out and about. Opportunity is always out there. And it seems like in San Fran, that's the mindset. You don't know if the person you're talking to could be the next person that's going to have a big breakthrough. Yeah. Versus maybe here, and I don't know, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but maybe here we're more adherent to hierarchy and,
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think it's a here specific problem. I think it is something that exists through most of society, and San Francisco is actually this one place where that doesn't exist to the same extent. Because of course, in every society, there's some level of hierarchy. In San Francisco, it's just a lot less so, and you feel it a little bit less. But let's be very clear, there's absolutely still a hierarchy. There are people who play status games, right? Especially as more and more money has poured into the scene. Yeah. And I think that was so interesting about Socratica, because it was genuinely a place. It didn't matter if you were older, out of school for a long time like me, or if you were just a first year student. The reason why you come together is because you're all trying to just make something that you're inherently interested in. And I think that was the kind of energy that San Francisco started with too, because if you ask people who were there 30, 40 years ago, they'll tell you, this is a place of weirdos.
So what are we making? What do you think? And this is, again, when you say you have to do it, you have to succeed. We have this pod. You said you have some new ideas for even what you think about doing with the pod. Yeah. Where are we right now?
Well, if you think about the traditional methods of distribution of products, services, and information, right? Pre-internet, just on the basis of shopping for anything alone. If you wanted a competition, if you really wanted to see what everyone stacks up against each other and what they have to offer, you have to physically put in a lot of time and effort to select, which is obviously worse off for the consumer because customers do best when you have lots of choices. And then the internet comes along, and it means that your ability to compare across the board, whether it's political or social systems, or if it's products, or if it's services or anything like that, that barrier to entry has gotten a lot lower. And with the advent of YouTube and Udemy, Khan Academy, things like that, now the barrier to learn how to get involved in this kind of ecosystem has been lowered even still. Mm-hmm. And so what I think is really interesting and why I'm committed to staying within a tech, and I'm literally learning how to code. I'm talking.
Okay, that's why do you think you're learning how to code? Obviously AI. I coded for the first time, vibe coding.
Yeah. Oh my
God.
God.
A month ago, I told you about that. Yeah. Do you think it's still a good skill to learn, or what's the concept behind that?
My personal opinion is that this is now the best time in history to learn how to code, because number one, it's so easy to get started, right? It's like Duolingo, right? How many people actually learn languages through Duolingo itself? Very small percentage of users. But what Duolingo has allowed is it's made the ability to learn languages a lot faster. And I think if you go on Instagram, if you go on TikTok, there's a lot of people who are teaching each other. Like I know Ella, my fiance, she watches a lot of people learning.
Shout out to Ella.
Shout out Ella, yeah. Yeah. Well, she is really keen on learning Chinese, and so she watches people make content. And I feel like without tools like Duolingo saying, hey, the barrier to entry gets lower, because she started off with Duolingo, right? Like everyone starts doing something and you realize, okay, this is really good for getting you started, but then if you really want to go serious, then you can go A, B, or C, and you have more options available to you. And so going back to coding, I think it's now the best time in human history to learn, because as these AI tools improve, they're absolutely not perfect. You still need to be really good at a host of other skills. Mm-hmm. And really what AI is going to do is going to augment and help you. Like there's, pre-show, Will and I talked about, whether AGI is coming, like, spoiler alert, I don't think it's coming anytime soon. I could be wrong, don't hold me to it, but
freezing cold takes, watch out for this one,
Yeah, like I think we're still quite far away, but humans who are assisted with AI, I think you should think of AI almost like, electricity, right? It's this fundamental like infrastructure type technology that helps power a lot more things. And so if because AI is a subset of mathematics, of philosophy, of computer science, and electrical engineering, any one of these specialties will really, really help you understand it better. And in fact, so for my business, I recently started paying just for 1 month, the $200 a month plan for ChatGPT. Yeah. And first, deep research is an amazing tool, right? It allows me as one individual to get access to so much knowledge that I would have spent hours to access before. Yeah. And now like 8 minutes for a deep research query, it feels like a long time. Anyways, so I have a friend who is insanely talented mathematician, and I watched her play around like writing essays and writing drafts with ChatGPT. And I was like, wow, your outputs are so good. Like, what do you do? Like, what are you using? Which model are you using? She was like, yeah, I'm just using the free ChatGPT. I'm like, wow. And so what she told me is that, because the basis of how AI is created is very similar to the basis of mathematics.
So right now right now you're going to be giving us some really good AI secrets, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of how these tools are created, right? Like they weren't created by some, random dudes in a lab. It was just people, primarily very, very research focused individuals, just like you would if you're discovering cancer medicine or penicillin or anything like that. Mm-hmm. It's people who have these backgrounds and they optimize for their backgrounds because that's what they know. Mm-hmm. And so if you have these technical skill sets, it actually makes it even easier for you to make use of these pieces of technology, right? It's like if you're in the real estate business, but you don't know how much lumber costs, you don't know how much labor costs, you don't know how to put together, you don't know how much time it takes for drywall to finish. Like, how are you supposed to run a real estate business, right? So I think like, what you're seeing now is that if you are a creative doer, you now have the ability to do much more than ever, not just with paid plans, but with free plans too. There's so much competition that's offering access to knowledge. Like Google's Gemini is really good. Right now, there's obviously DeepSeek, which just actually released an update yesterday, which puts it at one of the best. Yeah, it's one of the best models out there, and it's completely free. And there's companies who are based in Canada who host it locally. There's just so many opportunities for individuals who wish to do something different to get started, right? Because you have the access of the entirety of human knowledge at your fingertips.
So then let's bring this, because again, we're talking about what we're trying to do as well, right? Because we're doing this podcast for a purpose, right? Like, as much as I love talking to Jerry, and some of it is just like, it's for a purpose and for fun, right? Like, obviously we're not broadcasting to millions of viewers every episode just
not yet.
Just exactly. But we'll get there. But we're doing this for a purpose, and we want to have an impact. And that's really what I spend a lot of time thinking about, is how can, individuals like yourself, myself, sure, we might have certain privileges and whatnot, but, I'm not a billionaire. I'm not the richest dude around. I'm not the most connected dude around. But that doesn't mean I can't impact the world. And that's really what I want to do with my time. That's what gives me a thrill, right? Yeah. It's not just, how do I get a couple of dollars, right? So that's part of the goal. And one of the things I've been thinking about, we're filming this right now at the lovely East Room on Carroll Street, co-working space. That's where I've moved my office to. And I was at one of the happy hour events last week, and I was speaking to the CEO of a nursing agency company, and invited her on this podcast. I'm going to follow up with that invite, and I'm going to use this clip as part of that. And everybody asked me, well, why are you doing this? Well, I said, one, I look at it and say that there's so many areas in society, important areas of change, that we have not made progress on in the past 60 years. You look at affordable housing, you look at healthcare, you look at education, you look at infrastructure. These are all major areas, and there's more that we really haven't made progress in. And there's so many people out there that are trying to do things. And I think in a very complex world, there's never been more stimulation. There's never been more media. There's never been more information. How does an individual take an idea in their heads and then go out and do something, right? And go out and make an impact. And I think part of what I want to do is to use this podcast to talk to people, to talk to like-minded people, and let them sort of lay out some of that information, right? Yeah. So that you don't have to spend, for me, the past 6 years getting myself acquainted with healthcare systems in Ontario. Yeah. And it's a good thing to gain the experience, but it's still 6 years of my life.
It is. And here's the thing. A lot of those 6 years can now be replicated maybe in weeks by just asking the right questions. However, having spent those 6 years, you now better understand what questions you should be asking versus someone who's not been in this field before, right? And I think that's the real power that I kind of want to highlight, is that it doesn't give you the answer. It tells you what questions you should be asking, right? Mm-hmm. It allows you to expand the limits of your mind and say, okay, it doesn't matter if I have a certain degree, or if I have a work experience of this background, or if I don't come from a certain environment. You have access to this information, and whether you choose to do or not to do, it's kind of solely based on yourself. Yeah. So anybody who wants to make an impact today, if you just want to, organize your local community church group, if you want to, join a union, or if you want to start a business, or if you want to get involved in politics, if you want to try to help reform or fix, our healthcare system, right? Like, you don't need to change the world overnight. You can start by taking small steps and just doing a little bit of what you already know, and what I've been trying to do, because a lot of the people that I'm spending time with today are university students, right? These are people who have certain technical knowledge and they want to apply them to industry. They want to build businesses around them. They want to create value, not just for themselves, but for the people around them. They want to bring people on board to work with them, fix problems that people find very annoying. And what I've been trying to do is trying to give some of these people the experience that I've had that you might not be able to find through ChatGPT. To give them real world experience and knowledge of, okay, just because, for example, networking events is like this really good topic of a lot of people when they talk about networking, they say go to this event or that event. Honestly, the best way to quote unquote network is just to have some inherent interest or passion and find other people with that kind of interest or passion, and you will more naturally find other people who will help you push yourself to the next level.
Well, you know what I think is very interesting, and what I think is good about the dynamic on this pod, is that we're talking about, I think, two different areas. We have interest in two different areas, and it reminds me, I don't know if anybody in the audience has ever read How to Get Rich by Naval Ravikant, and there's this passage in it. So he says, to get rich, you're going to need leverage. Leverage comes in labor, comes in capital, or it can come through code or media. And I think what's really interesting is that you've been very interested in the code and the tech side of it. And what I've sort of been very interested in over the past 3 years is media. And I think both of those things, it's two different forms of gaining leverage. And they're really what the world kind of revolves around. Yeah, of course, capital and labor really are the domain of incumbents, right? That's your big corporations. They have all the capital, they have all the labor that's required, right? Me sitting here, I have staff for my company, but I'm not Chartwell, I'm not Amica, I'm not a multi-billion-dollar REIT. You can get to that point over time. But so what are we left with? If you're trying to start, whether it's a traditional startup or if you're doing a social enterprise or a nonprofit, how do you fight the big guys? How do you get out there? You need leverage, and capital is tough to get. Not impossible to get, but it's tough to get. And really, even to get the capital, you're gonna have to leverage the two, code or media. Yeah. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, absolutely. I think right now, if you go down to Silicon Valley, what they talk about, what's really shown today, there's actually like kind of three pillars of starting something new in the technology space. You either need good technical infrastructure, right? Understanding of how to make something from scratch. You need good distribution. Once you make something, someone has to, ship it and sell it and share it with people. And the third one is actually design. Right? It needs to make people feel good. I mean, if you look at the setup today, we've both got MacBooks, right? And the growth of Apple has been almost stupid. Like they just keep growing. And now they're shipping, I don't know if you saw the new MacBook M4 Air. You can get that for like, I don't know what it is in Canada, but in the US it's like $999 plus tax.
I need a new laptop. So
well, the thing is that it's actually very hard for a lot of people to recommend laptops that are not MacBook Airs, because the price, the form factor, the ecosystem that you get around it, the ability to customize, and the number of people who build custom stuff for Mac. I didn't even realize this until I switched around 4 months ago. It's humongous, right? Like there's all these tools when they launch, they help you get started on here. And like the way they got started was because they made things that made people feel good. Right? It's like this phone looks good. It's accessible. The one thing that a lot of people say why they get their family's iPhones is because, my grandma can use it without needing to set up a lot. And so that feels part and design, I think actually in Canada, I think actually Toronto is like one of the design capitals of the world. You see the creativity.
In terms of condo buildings, maybe not so much. But
we're not talking about condos, but I'm talking about like if you look at some of the street art, if you look at some of the more fine art, if you look at just
there's a lot. It's an amazing city. A lot going on.
Yeah, we've got TIFF. There's media. There's a lot of people who are really trying to express themselves.
Well, and I think the media, and that's really, I started a Substack and I've been posting on LinkedIn recently. And basically the idea is to help again, social entrepreneurs and nonprofits grow. And using my experience, again, really when I say experience, using my pain to try to teach and share my learnings so that, again, people can not have to go through that.
Of course.
And really what I think so much of it is, again, the technical, like I think you're right. If you can create a product that you have the technical knowledge to execute on, that's a foundational way to go. And then you said it was design and distribution, right? And distribution and design are, I would say, very interrelated. I would put them all under marketing. And I think people look at marketing and they think it's like this, it's
like advertising.
It's this, marketing's not serious. Oh, marketing's the easy part of biz school or whatever. It's this soft skill. We don't know how to value soft skills. The truth of the matter is what you said about making people feel. And I want to pull up this quote because my mom just used it in a presentation last week. You can check out that post actually on my Substack. Maya Angelou said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel."
Wow, that's a great one.
And it's a great one because at the end of the day, we like to think we're these rational, logical beings. But it's really not the case. We really layer our logic on top of the feeling that we already have.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like when I was when I was coaching on that presentation, the point that I was making to her is, look, the content of your slides, most people will not remember what you said in this presentation. But they will remember the feeling that the presentation gave them if you hit these emotional notes. And the information that you have in there that's valuable, they'll come back to it if you hit those notes. Yeah. And so much of business is that. Why do you buy a Mac? Sure, I'm not that technically, like I know a little bit about computers, but I'm not breaking down specs between the different computers. But Apple definitely has a monopoly on the feeling around computers.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing with shoes.
That's why there's a cult.
It's a cult. It's like, look
same with Nike.
Adidas. Do you know that Nike's a better shoe? Do you actually know that? What makes a good shoe?
I have no clue.
You have no clue.
But
people would walk around and say Nike's the best shoe. No, Nike's the shoe that makes you feel the most. That's why you think it's the best shoe. Yeah. And that, people think it's manipulative, but it's not manipulative. It's human. When we have a conversation, it's all feel, the vibes, as we keep saying. It's how do you get along with someone? That matters.
Yeah.
And again, in a world that's going to have more and more AI, I keep thinking that what's going to be really valuable is your ability to connect to what's human. The more you can connect to humans, that's the more you'll build your business, your nonprofit, your charity, whatever you're trying to do. If you still got to connect to people until one day maybe the AI has the purse strings or whatever that you're looking
yeah, that's when I'm really scared.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, I think I think the feels part is something that is almost overlooked in common parlance in conversations, and that I couldn't express this more clearly. I couldn't feel this more clearly than when I went to the Empire Club event versus Socratica, right? Like honestly, you go to Waterloo, one of the top, most prestigious universities in Canada. This computer science program has like a 3.5% acceptance rate. It's stupid. People come all over the world to try to attend this school. But when you talk to these guys and you ask them questions, you ask them for help, they just come help you. Right? They're just like, oh yeah, let me do what I can. And of course, people who are younger, they have more time and less commitments, things like that. But it's more of the attitude. Whereas you go to an event like the one I went to, and I'm sure there's a lot of great people there who are super helpful, and it's the timing, the situation and whatnot. But yeah, it almost feels like, okay, what can you do for me? Right? It's like, okay, so if we talk, why should I talk to you? There's not as much openness or exploration or curiosity. And I think, to go back to the original point of what I want to do, is like I want to create a culture where it feels like no matter how big you get, you will try to give back as much of your time as possible to the people who help do it. And when you think about the interaction between business and community, right? Because let's be honest, most of us are in Canada or in some Western country somewhere because this country offered a lot of economic progress. We probably left our homes not because it didn't feel great. I mean, some people might have done that, but for majority of people, it's because they felt like there's economic opportunities, to live a better life, to have a house, to a land of their own, a community of their own to care for, to the ability to move up the social ladder and create, self-worth and a pride and what you do. Like at the end of the day, business has to contribute in that sense of providing economic opportunities for people, and then governance has to kind of provide for those who are unable to do that yet. Because the other really interesting thing that I found from going to Waterloo, and you talk to people about startups there, right? And a lot of the managers and directors of the programs behind venture capital programs in the region know this. It's like most Waterloo students come from like decent backgrounds, usually like middle class, lower middle class, something like that. And many students want to just go and then get a career that will pay them, up to $10 million by the end of their career, and they can retire and live happily. And that's great for them and for the program. But if you're trying to help the country, the country needs people to not only who feel fulfilled by what they have for themselves, but rather, how can I lift up everyone around me too, right? Because one of the really interesting things that I found about Silicon Valley, it's people there, especially nowadays, rail against a lot of government intervention, rail against subsidies, government programs, and especially evil words like socialism. But it's kind of funny because the entire reason why that area of the world is so wealthy and strong and powerful is because the workers who help produce these products get to receive the financial benefits and impact of their work, right? Mm-hmm. Every single startup, if you're a really good startup and you don't offer equity, you're not going to make it, because why would someone choose to work for you over somewhere else where they really feel like I'm quite literally a very small, maybe a very small percentage, but I'm an owner of what I do. And I feel pride in creating this. And you can kind of see it when you go to some of the events, because you'll see normal employees, pick up the trash when they see lying around on the floor. They'll go fix things because they care. It's theirs, right? They are very much bought in. And that's, I think, the number one thing that really attracts me to the tech industry, is that there's a culture of people also buying in. Let's hear it.
And this is one of the things where I think branding, again, marketing, branding, how you communicate, where tech benefits from this. Like my brother, so this employee ownership concept, my brother has been very invested in that. He's been doing a lot of work on it. And when he was home over the holidays, I spoke to him and I said, look, one of the biggest issues, again, talking about the senior care industry, which again, is it healthcare? Is it real estate? In my mind, it's healthcare enabled by real estate. But to their mind, these are real estate companies. They're REITs that are on the stock market, right? And when you look at the amount of wealth that's been created from the care of seniors, and I talked about this concept of charitable or charity uncanny valley. Like uncanny valley is this, like when you see an AI image and like of a human and you're like,
feels kind of too real.
Yeah, like that's not quite right. That's uncanny valley. And people get this with a lot of social enterprise companies, where basically because you can't communicate why you deserve to make money in a space, people are confused. Because they say like, shouldn't that really be in the domain of charity? Like, because really there's two ways to get money. Either one, you're exchanging something of value for money, right? I sell you this phone, you give me money. Or you're saying, hey, I want to help this group of people over here. Can you help me do that? Sure, and we call that a donation typically. Yeah. So, but when you're saying, look, as somebody who wants to make a difference, hey, I want to build, I'll use myself as an example of somebody who has not done a good job of this, right? In the past. Hey, I want to help more people with dementia. I want to build more dementia care home beds. Okay. Where does that, unless you have dementia,
right?
Where am I giving you the opportunity to interact with me? Right? Because I'm not offering you, you don't have dementia. I can't offer you anything, right? And I'm not a charity. So what are you supposed to do? Yeah. And that's charity uncanny valley, right? But the thing is that a lot of these companies, you got to change the way you talk about it, right? And open up that conversation. And when you say, look, actually, here's an example. We're going to be building dementia care homes, right? But one of the great advantages that we have is that we know that PSWs, personal support workers, are the actual lifeblood of this industry, okay? That they're the ones that do the work, and it's hard work, right? And when you're saying that, when you're talking about minimum wage for PSWs to do the level of work that's so important, it's difficult. But you say, look, actually, every employee that's with us, actually, our seniors' homes are going to convert to apartment buildings or condos at the end of a life cycle, of a 20-year or 25-year life cycle. So by the time a PSW has gone to school, joined us, worked in that home for 25 years, their reward, they will share in the reward of that real estate, whether it's actually receiving a condo unit or receiving the shares of the company, whatever they prefer at the end of the day. That type of thinking doesn't have to belong to Silicon Valley.
No, absolutely not.
Right? It can exist in what we do in what's a boring industry, but we make the industry boring.
Yeah.
Right?
I think one of the big debates that's happening right now, even the tech scene, is because of AI, now one person can do more things. People are asking, well, why should I bring more people on the team? Why should I pay, especially when the job market is what it is, for people who study computer science and engineering and STEM fields? Why should you bring out more people and offer parts of your company to have them join? I think it's very tempting to think that way. And I've been having this debate myself, but if I can find the right person to help me build something really awesome, and we share values, we share common goals, and we want to help other people, because at the end of the day, no one's going to give you money to buy your stuff unless you're helping them with a pain point that's so bad that they're willing to part money with it, right? Like, you have to actually fix real world problems to make money. Well, then why wouldn't you want to incentivize the people to not only, do what's labeled on the job requirements, but also put in the extra effort to care because they're incentivized to care, right? I think in this world, I think about the world in terms of incentives, right? We do things because we're incentivized. So like even helping others, we feel good when helping others. Yeah. So of course we would like to all think, I'm just an inherently good person, so I give free advice. But like when I help these young people, I feel good about it, right? I want to keep doing it because when I see somebody that I helped, get to the next stage to develop in life, I think you see a lot of teachers, you see a lot of policemen and firefighters feel the same way. It's like, hey, I helped other people do better than they would have otherwise. That makes you feel good, and you want to keep doing that again. So I think we should incentivize those kind of good feelings and get people to really care about the output and outcome of their work, whether it's something super complex or even something super basic and simple, because really nothing is really that basic and simple. And if it is, automation is coming for it. So we should find a way to empower the people who are working on the ground to say, okay, well, if you're doing something as straightforward as, let's say, cleaning, right? Could we give this person more responsibility to manage and organize, to try to figure out how to do things faster, to do things better, because there's always things that we could be doing better, right? This world, I don't think there's any part of the world where there's a perfect picture and everyone's happy and there's no problems.
Well,
so,
what's interesting? I'm just thinking, again, we're thinking about the impact that we want to have with this show, to use this show for a purpose. And I wonder if there's a way that we can, everyone talks about building community, right? And it's a buzzword, but it's a real thing at the same time. And I wonder, is there a way that we can build community around this show and have people actually have ownership of this show too on a go forward? Like, shouldn't we be thinking about that as well? Like
meme coins.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do it live.
Will coins.
Will coin. Go get it. Yeah. It's not a pump and dump. Totally.
You know what? But if you think about it, though, right? Yeah. Like people care about the meme coins because they have a stake in it, and they're like, I wish. Though I think those are like bad incentives.
Yeah,
right? It's like pumping things for the sake of pumping. That's bad. Don't do that. That's bad.
No, like I'm thinking about like the idea of having viewers. Like again, if we're contributing things, like let's say we get sponsors. Let's say we get sponsors. We start getting ad revenue, right? And we're trying to. Let's say we're doing social impact or entrepreneurial impact. Can we not contribute some of that money to, incubators or different things that our viewers are a part of, or like give our viewers or our guests, opportunity. Like, again, use the show as an opportunity to like. I know like Joe Rogan and them would just be like, well, when you're a big enough show, just the pub that you get from getting on a show is good for those people. But like, I'm just wondering if we can give back in that sort of way so that it becomes, I think at the end of the day, what you want is a cycle. You want something that becomes, that just, it reinforces and it makes it stronger as it goes along, right? I wonder if there's a way we can do that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this a lot, and honestly, I would love there to be so many different ways to do so, but so far, what I've seen actually succeed is financial. When you look at going back to the tech industry, right? It's money in, money out, right? If you can convince people, hey, doing this is in both of our best financial interests, then that is by far the most common and the most successful way of incentivizing that. And the trick is then how do you incentivize people not to do that too much, right? Where the only output is I care about money, and that's one of the reasons why I'm looking to the process of moving back here, because in the U.S. it's quite money centric, and there's literally laws which says if you're an officer, an executive at a company, then you're legally responsible to deliver that financial output. Now, I don't know. I understand it, but I worry about the secondary and third, tier impacts of these kind of decisions, because, greed is one of the original 7 deadly sins, right? And if you try to incentivize greed, then you're creating a much different system than simply incentivizing welfare and livelihood. So.
Yeah, no, and I don't know, we're in one of these boardrooms, so I don't know if someone's coming for us directly at 4, but we only have 2 minutes left. I want to sort of end on what's a interesting idea or concept that you want to explore on the show, and so let's put those goals out there so that we can live up to them.
Yeah, I would love to see more people do their own thing. I would love to see people find ways to get started with a side project or something that they could maybe turn to their own business. I've been the person who's been trying to convince people, say, hey, if you're very talented or skilled at one thing and you can get a big audience for it, then perhaps you can make a living off of doing what you love. And that will give you a lot more, a satisfaction and motivation than simply forcing yourself to go to the workplace where you don't own any of the future outcomes of what you're working on. And it's not a path for everybody. I don't encourage it for everybody. In fact, I think most people probably should stay where they are until they feel very certain that they're ready to go. But I would love to participate with you and with the audience to try to build a better life for themselves, right? If you need some help, reach out. Let us know how we can help and what kind of advice or connections or resources we can help provide.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And what I would say, just as sort of my goal, as sort of a last word, would be to cross-pollinate. What I really want is, in addition to, like I was talking about earlier, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders, etc., I also want a lot of artists.
Yeah.
I want a lot of artists to be involved in these conversations, because I actually think there's a lot of crossover. Especially in social entrepreneurship, but there's a piece that I'm going to write that basically social entrepreneurs, like you're really akin to an artist, but we'll come back to that. And I want to sort of share ways of thinking about the world. So if you're an artist, if I have access to you on social media, or if you come across this clip and you think that, you're interested in social impact and entrepreneurial impact, drop me a line, drop Jerry a line, the Unrepped Founder, and let's get you on the show. So this
let's have a chat.
Yeah, this has been an amazing episode. I had fun recording it in person.
Yeah, finally.
And finally, again, Jerry and I go back to high school, and it's great to keep friends for that long, and it's exciting to get a chance to work together as well. So we'll be back. We're going to come back with a regular schedule.
Sometime soon.
We'll get a regular schedule. All our socials are up. YouTube is up. Again, you can find us on LinkedIn. You can find us on, actually, we need an Instagram account. We're not on Instagram.
Soon.
But, so not all the socials
Coming
are
soon.
up. I lied. Not all the socials are up. They're coming up, but more socials are up. And we're doing it live. So thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thanks for
Jerry.
tuning in. Yeah.
All right, man.
Good stuff.